Welcome to the Choral Connection, a series of interviews with musicians with whom Maestro Harold Rosenbaum has collaborated over his 47-year international conducting career. We hope you are inspired by their artistry and the stories they have to tell. For more about the series, please visit www.haroldrosenbaum.com.
Welcome, everybody. Today I have a good friend and colleague, Professor George Rothman. I'll tell you about him now, and then I'll ask him some questions. Professor George Rothman is the conductor of Brooklyn College's Conservatory Orchestra, and he is Riverside Symphony's founding music director and conductor, and has led orchestras throughout the United States, as well as in South America, Asia, and Europe. Praised as adventurous, committed, and energetic by Musical America, his performances of an unusually diverse repertoire are also routinely acclaimed by the New York Times and other leading publications. As an advocate for new music, Mr. Rothman has led well over 150 world and local premieres from both established and emerging composers around the world, while Riverside Symphony's 7 CDs of major contemporary orchestral works have been lauded by fanfare for their awesomely assured performances. Furthermore, Mr. Rothman is active as a pianist and lecturer, regularly participating in workshops and seminars with leading American composers. Now, I know George as the conductor of the Riverside Symphony, which is a New York-based professional orchestra founded in 1981 by George and composer Anthony Korff. The orchestra is recognized for programs which emphasize lesser-known repertoire. It provides an ongoing forum for emerging soloists of exceptional promise and has showcased numerous instrumental and vocal talents over its history. The orchestra's concerts regularly feature guest soloists from around the world, and the orchestra's focus has been mainly directed to overlooked corners of the repertoire with a special emphasis on contemporary music. The orchestra has championed such American composers as Andrew Imbrie, Stephen Hartke, George Santakis, Maria Davidovsky, and Ricardo Zon Muldoon, and European composers Marius Constant, Henri Dutilleux, Gus Johnson, and Robert Suter, among others. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing these correctly.
Close enough.
Okay. Furthermore, Riverside Symphony's International Composer Reading Program has sought to expand the field of opportunity for living composers worldwide. While several of the readings have been devoted solely to American works chosen from an open competition process, several installations of this project have also focused on works by composers from a designated country, such as France, Norway, or Switzerland. So, very good. Hi, George. We go back a long way.
Yes, we do, although it seems like a short time ago when we first started working together.
Yes. Well, we have collaborated on a whole bunch of projects, on important projects, but I forget how and when we first met. You recall?
Well, Harold, you have to recognize, back when we first started, you were famous.
Oh.
And I knew of your work and I knew your name. And it wasn't until we had an opportunity to program something that you had been hiding for many years. From what I can remember, is the Ravel. It was his submission for the Prix de Rome.
Yes.
And it was a choral and orchestra pieces, and you actually had the musical fragments from these things, and you enticed me to program them, and that was the start of a long and just a productive and musically rewarding relationship.
Yes, which we'll talk about a little bit more. But let me, I forgot that was the time we first met.
And we both went to Queens College. I think that's where I got to know you.
Yeah, but I started in 1967, and you started.
1981, 1982. But your name was all over the place there, and so that's where you started to enter my musical orbit.
Well, what happened, this is an interesting story. What happened was I went to Dr. R.B. Orenstein, one of the, if not the world's leading scholar on Ravel. And
Yes.
I said to him, and I knew the answer was going to be no, but the answer was yes. I said, do you have any, or have any works by Ravel for chorus that have never been performed before? He says, yeah, come to my house. So he went to the Bibliothèque Nationale in Paris, and he had microfilms. He took pictures or whatever it was of these four, four or five works um, submitted. I think it was four works submitted over 6 years, as when he was entering the Prix de Rome competition, and the works were consisted of like an interlude, a prelude, and something else, and then a choral piece in each
Right.
submission. And he said these had never been done before. So I actually copied. There were hundreds of mistakes in the score, by the way, and so I, handwritten, and then I also copied each part, the violin part by hand, the flute. I copied.
Oh my.
Anyway, it was a long project, and I did them in Paris, and then you conducted them in Alice Tully Hall as the American premieres, I believe.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
But what did you think of them? Were they sort of too youthful?
Definitely nascent beginnings, and but you could see his musical DNA all over the music, and it was fascinating because we know so many composers who won that prize, and the fact that he entered so many times and didn't win was
Right.
shocking, and a life lesson to musicians. Even though you might be deserving, you don't always get the recognition you think it should be coming your way.
I think the best he did was third prize, and Lily
Oh,
Lily Boulanger at the age of what? She died at the age of 21, but she won it. she
oh,
first prize.
I may have known that. That's a recalled fact. Yeah, great.
Uh, yeah. So Riverside Symphony has a tried and true concert format, which has brought you a consistently large following and kudos and admiration in the press. Can you please explain what that format is and why you feel it is important and successful?
Well, a couple of reasons. New York is a very sophisticated town for and has great audiences for music, and there are a number of orchestras that cover the standard repertory and standard programming. And I think we zeroed in. Anthony Korf and I zeroed in on the idea of discovery, because we kept discovering music that hadn't been played, that wasn't known, and composers and soloists, and we thought we should really have a vehicle for all of these uh, opportunities and musical opportunities that came our way. And I think it started out with just as students, we were constantly listening and discovering new things, and so we were gathering lists and making up programs. And at the end of the day, we just discovered that this was a winning formula in New York. New York deserved an orchestra that was dedicated to the kind of repertory that we were discovering, and it was not a surprise that we had a very dedicated audience that loved and has trusted us through all these decades of doing this very interesting programming. They know they're going to get quality performances. They know that we're going to present the best soloists that are promising, that we feel are very promising and are at the cusp of becoming a big major star. And there were composers, my gosh, there are thousands of composers that weren't being played and being heard on the concert stage.
Right.
And of course, we were discovering pieces by Prokofiev and Sibelius and Constant and Dutilleux and all these great composers living and in the past that were not being played. And that's the nucleus of our programming philosophy, and it was met with great support and great reception by our audiences and the press too.
So when did you start to combine these pieces with standard repertoire on programs? Because don't you now,
Um,
using
Oh,
that formula where you do old and new on every program?
yeah. I mean, because I think everybody wants something familiar, so we always have that element in. But that can be either at the beginning of the program or the end of the program, and we always think about the sort of the contour, the musical contour of a performance. So if we pick like we're going to do a Beethoven symphony, we might open with a really modern sort of a complement to that, and then do a concerto that would sort of bridge the gap between the new and the old.
Mhm. I guess the standard way of performing old and new is to do new and old so that the audience doesn't walk out after you do the old. That's part of it, isn't it? Good.
Yeah, that is a challenge. If you program a piece um, that's newer or unknown to most people, they may not stay after intermission if it's at the end. But I'll tell you, we've had great success with performing. One of my favorites is Henri Dutilleux, a French composer, and we performed his first symphony twice now, and everyone in the audience stayed for
Wow.
both performances. So it really depends. We attract people who are curious and want to know new things, and they've learned to trust that we're not going to put something on that we don't believe in 100% or beyond, and that's going to guarantee them a really good musical experience.
Well, the whole organization is so well run. I've been to performances and you get big crowds and they all were very well done and you've been around, forever. So yeah, that's great. But
Thank you, Harold.
also the fact that you have, so it's not just the old and the new, but then you have all these wonderful soloists that are a real attraction. Uh, to people.
Yeah, I mean, it falls under the heading of discovery. I mean, we just keep discovering all these great artists that are coming out from conservatories with very few opportunities to be heard. So many soloists over the years have made their debut with us and have gone on to have major careers, and we're quite proud of that.
Right.
And it used to be in the old days where if you were a young soloist starting out, they would send you out into the hinterlands and then, sort of, get your repertoire down and then do a debut in New York. But that started drying up, just about the time we started the orchestra. So soloists were dying for opportunities to be heard. And so we found them, we found the repertoire, and we presented them, and it's been a thrill. It's been a thrill for everybody
That's great.
to do that.
You're also an active educator as a professor at Yale, Columbia, and now at Brooklyn College, where you conduct its conservatory orchestra. Can you tell us what it's like working with student players as compared to professionals? I assume each have their own rewards.
Well, I think any good musician learns from whatever their environment is, and you get a lot out of each group in different ways. With my younger orchestra, I'm rediscovering some things that I had sort of built into my sort of subconscious, and because I'm teaching them how to perform and ways, different techniques, I've had to go deep into my recesses to figure out what it is they need to play it the way, either a style or a specific performance practice or a technique, etc. And so that keeps me fresh with them. And of course, their energy and excitement about performing is something that feeds me back. So it's a very kind of circular, breathing kind of relationship. They get something from me, they give back to me, and then it keeps going. It's just great. The same thing happens with a professional orchestra. Only I think the difference is, certain qualities, certain repertoire we can do with certain Riverside. There's no limitation about the repertoire that we can do. The orchestra is made up. Every single person in that orchestra is a virtuoso, and we can actually, budget, being the most important thing that allows us to play the repertoire that we can do. we can do just about everything. And we've done, old music, traditional music, classical music, future, contemporary music, and it shines. And it's just a great, great experience working with this caliber orchestra. They're completely responsive to anything that that we ask of them, and we have a very good relationship because we listen to each other. I listen to them, they listen to me, and it's very much like a relationship that there's dialogue back and forth. And that's very helpful and constructive. And of course, I become enriched with the dialogue.
And so many conductors nowadays are like that, as opposed to Toscanini or Stokowski. Or the,
Oh yeah. Well, we used to play tapes of Toscanini's rehearsal with the NBC orchestra, yelling at them. He was doing a Verdi overture or something, and he was just cursing in 2 languages or whatever.
Yeah.
It's funny. Yeah, those days are long gone.
Yeah, that's good. So how is it that you're able to get? I mean, look, New York has thousands of great players. I mean, we're not even talking about now during the pandemic. It's a whole other situation, but
Yeah.
after this. But it's wonderful that you're able to get the top virtuosos. And I guess you have does Anthony Korff, your artistic director, does he also contract the orchestra, or do you have a separate contract?
Oh no, we have a manager that does that now, but all the musicians go through us, and we have a standard roster of people that we have, and they're our first call. And because they're so great and talented and busy, sometimes they can't play performance with us. But then we have a second and third list, and that's not a ranking. That's just further people of equal talent and virtuosity that we can call upon. And it's basically because New York attracts the best players, and they're still making a living here and playing all different sorts of musical in all sorts of different musical organizations.
Right, because people might not realize that London has 5, or it used to be 7, I think now it's 5 full-time.
Yeah.
But New York City has only 1 full-time orchestra, New York Philharmonic. So I believe that's true.
Depends if you can count the Metropolitan Opera.
I was just going to say Metropolitan Opera, but
Yeah.
But the point is that to make a living, players have to go from one gig to another.
This is true. And some of them, there are other orchestras that they play with, the ballet orchestras, the opera orchestras. Some of them play in Broadway, and there's, and through in a good working environment, there's enough work.
Right.
There used to be a lot more work, and it probably was a lot more, musicians in New York as a result. But there's audiences, there's halls, there's a hunger for music performance, and we look forward to, obviously, we're in a dry spell. We haven't performed since last February, and this is now January 2021, and we're starving for that life to come back.
I know when it does come back, I think we'll all spring into action big time, and the audience will be.
Oh gosh.
Well,
yeah.
Okay. What was it like studying with Leonard Bernstein and Seiji Ozawa? Where and when was that, and what were some of the things you learned from them?
Wow, we're going back in time, Harold. Yeah. So this was a special summer at Tanglewood, where both of them were in residence for extended periods, and so the conductors in the program were able to see them on a daily basis, either working with us directly or working with the orchestra or the BSO, etc. They're both wonderful, but for very, very different ways. Bernstein, I think what I got from him, he was obsessed with, inner beats and subdivisions, and I later interpreted that to be the most important quality of music making, and that's what happens in between the notes, and the time that it takes to do that, and what you can do, what you can express in between the notes, and I thought that was, that's what that's one of many topics that conductors think about all the time, is what am I doing with this note? What am I doing with this rhythm? What are we doing as far as color and all these things? But he was constantly talking to both the BSO and the festival orchestra about subdivisions. And of course his conducting was always kind of a little bit of subdivision in it. And one of the mistakes that we made as young disciples is that we tried to conduct like him, and it was just, no one succeeded at it. It was, in fact, it was a disaster because the orchestra couldn't follow us. So we had to sort of, be who we are, which is what every conductor should be. She should always be, what we are. From Seiji, he introduced to me, I was conducting a Bartok piece for him, and I can't remember if it was Concerto for Orchestra or what. I think it was Concerto for Orchestra. Anyway, he was harping on, and I don't mean harping, but he kept underscoring the importance of the Hungarian language in Bartok's music, and how the accentuation on the first syllable of each word would find its way in Bartok's language. And that is a topic, is absolutely, an endless one to explore with, every composer that we ever known. I mean, can talk to, Beethoven and German language, etc. And I think that little tidbit just stayed with me and has informed and forced me to sort of question the relationship between the music and the language.
Even when there's no text, you're saying, you're like,
yeah, no, I think, a composer, it's like a jazz person, a jazz musician, they are speaking the rhythms and the nuances, and the notation for the time, certainly prior to Mahler, was so limited. You couldn't put in all the nuances. You'd have to kind of know the style and know the composer, and know the language, and know the culture, that would help inform you how you would balance all of those nuances in a performance.
That's so interesting. Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, I was saying, but it was so funny. I just remember, as you asked that question, I was just remembering this one section where we're doing this, the Bartok excerpt, or whatever it was, and he mentioned this whole language issue and topic to me. And it was in front of, like, cameras and all. Oh, it's crazy, and I couldn't digest it at the time, but that thought stayed with me, and that was like, it's like so long ago. I don't even remember what year it was.
You know what that reminds me of? When I was performing a piece by Rameau recently, an a cappella choral piece. Well, it could be done with a continuo also. Labora, I forget the name of it, Laborate Domini or something. I read about the style of playing of French Baroque music, where they would have, bowing the gamba, instead of like this, it would be like this, so that the emphasis was always on the downbeat, and therefore everything after that was just instead of having like the primary beat and the secondary beat almost as loud. It wasn't almost as loud. It was fascinating. So very akin to what that was.
Wow.
I can see, going back to Bernstein for a moment.
Yeah.
It's funny when you say everybody tried to, emulate his conducting style, but the orchestra couldn't follow. I mean, he was the first to admit that he didn't have a great conducting technique.
Yeah.
He was so revered that people somehow made themselves able to follow him. So, yeah, so I would imagine that all of you who went there had a better physical technique than he did. And when you tried to incorporate some of his ideas, it was a mess. Yeah.
Yeah, well, what he brought to the podium was, no one could duplicate. I mean, his charisma and his affection and love and his engagement technique. I mean, that his conducting technique was through his engagement,
Yeah.
and he did it in every way possible.
I know.
Some ways that I remember watching him rehearse. It was, I think, a Haydn mass with just the singers on the stage, and a piano, and he was smoking at the same time with the singers on the stage, and he would do some things like that were very kind of like, oh my God, you can't believe he did this. And I remember being backstage before at intermission and at the end of, I think it was Mahler 2. And he was smoking in one hand and had the oxygen tank very close by.
Yeah, I know.
It was like, this is a scary situation here.
I know. Close when he was, quite near death, he would conduct and go backstage and take the cigarette, but also the oxygen mask. Poor.
Yeah,
But yeah, unbelievable. That you had.
Yeah, I mean, we're so fortunate to have had that exposure, but at the end of the day, it's part of what we incorporate into what we are as music beings.
Right.
And that, of course, every musician starts out imitating. It's just, it's a natural thing. And then as you get more experience and more confident and belief in yourself, that your musical instincts are speaking to you and to your players, you sort of let go of these things that you think you need to do, and then your real musical essence comes out in its truest form, which is so important.
Right. So you and I, as we spoke, we have collaborated in concerts and recordings since the 80s, and I've enjoyed every minute of it, of course, and we've achieved such great results together. One of those projects was performing and recording the music of Andrew Imbrie.
Oh, yeah.
More people should know about this great composer who passed away just a few years ago.
Right.
I think he's an extraordinary composer. I wish I knew more of his music, and I think I'll make an effort to learn more. But what first attracted you to his music?
Well, it's funny. A lot of the composers that I was that I had performed before really knowing his music, in their bio they would say, and studies with Andrew Imbrie. And I kept seeing his name in so many bios, composer bios, that I said, this man must have something to offer all these composers, because they were citing him as their teacher. And of course, I got to know his music through going to Parnassus concerts, which Anthony used to run, and I immediately liked his language. He's one of these composers he's so honest and so direct, and a composer who sounds instantly like himself. His musical presence is felt within like 2 seconds. You know who you're listening to, but it's so. I've done a lot of complicated music where you're doing 4/4/5/8 3/16, these kind of crazy bars and these rhythms and these metric modulations and stuff. But Andrew Imbrie's music is so direct. It's like he writes everything in one time signature, and when the time signature changes, it makes sense. There's a big reason for that. The other thing that I love about his language is it's definitely American. You would never ever think that you were listening to anything but an American composer when you hear his. And I don't mean that to pigeonhole him in any way, because American composers are a conglomerate of everything that's come before them. But there's something like even when you listen to somebody like Copland, you understand you're listening to an American composer, and Andrew has that quality in his music, plus his harmony and his rhythm and his the way he could pivot so easily and fluidly in his music is remarkable, and so unlike anything else I've heard. And he's so original.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I
yeah.
learned something here. I mean, I never thought, and I don't know that much of his music, but I know Adam, which we did with you, and I, of course, his Requiem we performed and recorded. But I don't. I'd have to go back and listen, but I don't see the American element in it. But maybe I'm just missing something. I mean, Copeland, obvious, and it's like Appalachian Spring, and
Yeah. Well, he's American, but he's his form of American. He's not Copeland's form of American or Bernstein's form of American. There's something just, I'm just thinking like the beginning of Adam, which we did. And I hope we can record that piece one day, Harold. I mean, it's an astonishing work. And he starts with this big bang, boom, a piano and a timpani roll. And then it sort of launches this whole long dialogue that the chorus sings thereafter. He just announces himself and goes, and it's I don't know how it's described. It's some of the hardest things to do that as educators is trying to describe. It's like, how do you describe a spice? How do you describe a dish? It's sort of, you have to see it and hear it. And that's why Riverside Symphony, programs works like this, because he is a master composer of the 20th century.
Let me just spell his name for the listeners. It's
Yeah.
Imperie, right?
Yeah.
Could it be that would you call his music atonal or close to it, and yet his vocal writing is very lyrical?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. I don't think he subscribes to any particular approach. I think he's very much an intuitive composer. I mean, he obviously has his forms and his phrase shapes and ideas in his head, but I don't think, I wouldn't call him atonal, because he has, he's got major and minor chords in it, and he has, altered chords in it, and it's all can be sort of described in a tonal way, but without sounding, like a tonal composer.
Well, for me, every moment of his music is astounding. So I'm interested in hearing more of it. So you have Riverside Symphony has an ongoing music education program, which I have witnessed in an event in Alice Tully Hall with hundreds of New York City public school students. Can you elaborate on that and its importance?
Oh, wow. Yeah, sure. The program that we discovered over 20 years ago is called Music Memory. Mm-hmm. And it's a program that we have in the New York City public schools in the 5 boroughs, where we teach the teachers how to teach the students how to listen to music. And we do it through a very innovative way. We have what we call listening maps, which guide the student as they're listening to the pieces. There's a musical depiction on the page, and they follow it with their finger, and they make an association with the sound. So it keeps them engaged as they're listening to the piece of music. It's great for this is geared for 4th through 6th graders. But I'll tell you, everybody that comes and hears what the finale of the program is, which is a name that tune type contest, where the orchestra plays excerpts from the 16 pieces that they've been listening to, and each school sends a team of 5 students to compete against all the other schools to name the composer and the name of the work.
Wow.
And at the end, well, the first excerpt is about 15 or 16 seconds of music, and as the contest progresses, the excerpts get shorter and shorter and shorter, and oftentimes the last excerpt is one note. And
like
yeah, right, yeah, and so many of the parents and the teachers and our audience members who come to me say, "Oh my God, I wish we had this program for adults, because this is just because people don't know how to listen to music if they haven't been doing it for a while."
Right.
And it would be great if we found another vehicle for adults to take advantage of this. But we've been running this program for, as I say, 19 or 20. I really can't remember. But each year we have anywhere between 5,000 and 10,000 students in this school, in this program, and representing 40, 50 schools in the 5 boroughs. And one of the byproducts of this, I mean, they're learning something about music, they're learning something about culture, they're certainly learning how to cooperatively listen together. But most importantly, for parents and for teaching, the kids are learning how to listen. And, there's not a parent or a teacher I haven't heard where, like, thank God for this program because it's teaching them to listen.
Wow.
That's, because their minds are so active. This really focuses that skill set. And what we hope will happen, and we don't know this, but we have gotten letters from older students now that have given Music Memory credit for their love of classical music and other forms of music. But the hope is that through this exposure, because now in the schools we used to have an instrumental program where everybody played an instrument, and that went out the window a couple of decades ago. We hope that this engenders and creates audiences for live music performance.
Right. And the fact that they hear, when they come to the competition, they actually hear your full orchestra live.
Oh, they're amazing. Oh, yeah.
I mean, as a child, I'd be so happy to have that experience. My God.
Well, anybody that wants to see this for real can go to the riversideSymphony.org website and go to Music Memory, or I forget if it's under educational, and go to Music Memory and see the video that we made of the contest itself. And you'll see how remarkable these kids are and how excited they are to listen to music.
You play any Andrew Imbrian there in the competition? Like 3 bars of Adam?
I hope I live long enough where that becomes part of the repertoire.
Right. Well, like Elliot Carter used to say, you might not understand my music now, but down the road, I'm sure it'll catch on. Who knows?
Let's hope so.
Let's hope so. Just one more question. I won't keep you. I'm good friends with both you and your artistic director, Anthony Korff. It seems both unusual and wonderful to have one person teaming up with you for what, over 30 years as he's your artistic director? 40 years. So how has that benefited your organization to have one person as artistic director for 40 years, and what are his roles in your organization?
Well, Anthony wears a lot of hats in this organization. Primarily, he's our composer in residence, and the artistic director, and he helps with programming and vetting out some of the the artists that we would consider, and presenting a choice of different performers and composers that we would consider, and then he sends them to me, and I listen to them, and I narrow down the list, and then we see what who we want to program. He also wears the hat of kind of an executive director, because he works very closely with the board, raising funds, overseeing the day-to-day operations. So we have an operations director and an orchestra manager with our team. So it really works well. Plus, we're very old friends. We met in college. I was an undergrad, he was a grad student, and we both fell in love with different kinds of music, and that's kind of how it started. And with that is kind of the foundation of our friendship and running the symphony.
Yeah.
Look what it's spawned. It's just remarkable. Plus our temperaments work with one another. You know, we understand each other, and you know, it's we've had, you know, a lot of um, challenges and good times, you know, running the symphony. You know, this is, you know, you want a challenge, try running a classical orchestra, um, you know, in New York, with the costs and everything involved. And, you know, I could not have had a better colleague, to, you know, to go through all the process that it took, to make this organization keep thriving and still alive and hopefully performing this fall.
Oh, I hope so. I'm sure it will happen. And also, he negotiates. I mean, he's negotiated with me. We've explored, you know, lots of working. What do you call that when somebody is the man who lays low and the other one comes out? You know, I don't know.
Well, it's a good cop, bad cop. I mean, you know, they're all sorts of all kinds of things. But you know, we all have our roles, and we all these roles change. Sometimes I have to be, you know,
Yeah.
I have to wear his role, and vice versa.
Yeah.
But it's a very special relationship, and very fortunate to have started. I mean, we started this just out of college, and when I don't think either of us knew what we were in for, and we didn't know what this organization was going to become. We just loved the music that we performed. We loved the musicians we worked with, and we wanted it to continue. And then, with that as a you know, foundation, everything else sort of grew out of that.
And isn't it great when you can start so young and you know what you want? And so many people, they flounder. They go to college, then when they graduate, they're still not sure what to do. You know, it's so great to have this
Yeah.
passion, direction,
Well,
ability to pull this off.
I think it's about believing your dream and keep at it. Don't relinquish that, because that's how things grow. And if you don't succeed the first time, you know, it's the same axiom. You know, you don't succeed at first, try again. That is so true. And holy cow, you know, sometimes you have successes and sometimes you don't, but you just keep moving forward. And
Look at
yeah.
our new president. I mean, today, for those of you watching this, is the day after Biden was inaugurated. And if anybody's been knocked down and has come back, it's him. So he's a great inspiration in that regard.
Yeah, I think, you know, students have to be prepared to expect challenge, and if they do, then they will keep pursuing. If you don't expect challenge, then I think things will become, you'll either learn to expect that or be very disappointed.
Right.
And
Mhm.
and I you know, I'm forever grateful, to so many people that have encouraged us, that have supported us, that have, you know, our audience who comes regularly. I mean, our subscribers who come in and year out and weather the storm. Sometimes we have to change venue, and sometimes, you know, funding doesn't allow for certain things that we, you know, announced ahead of time. But you know, this is one of the great things that comes out of long-term relationship with an audience, and this is to say nothing about our terrific board of directors who have been behind us for all these years. And we are enormously grateful. We would not be where we are today without them, and they have been the backbone of our organization since day one.
That's so great.
And yeah, we're completely fortunate, and you know, when we're away from performance like we are now, it's a good time to reflect. on those avenues that have gotten you where you've been able to go, and
Yeah,
and it's wonderful. We're just,
makes you appreciate.
fortunate.
Yeah, makes you appreciate them even more. You have time to appreciate them. You're not just running around.
Yes, right. It's true. It's fun. It's funny. Yeah, yeah. I'm I'm out at a. I'm not in my New York City apartment. My wife and I are out in Long Island, and so I was reorganizing all my music, and I found an inscribed leather-bound pad that we got from one of our board members from 10 years ago, from celebrating our 10th anniversary. And I was so touched by seeing this that, they thought to give us this memento, and I'm using it again after 30 years.
Wow, excellent. So you're near. I won't ask you where you're near. That you have a right to remain private. But the man who who's the world's leading authority on Ravel lives in Long Island, maybe near you, and he actually has 60 things that were in Ravel's house, like paperweights. He has them in his house.
Are you kidding me?
I'm not kidding you. So when we're offline, I'll tell you about this.
Oh my.
Yeah.
Because I was doing some Ravel last year, and I went online to YouTube I wanted to see what his house was like. And they had several tours of his house and how he sort of organized his rooms, and he decorated and painted stencils on his on the walls and on the moldings, and it was just amazing to see how he was so precise with every aspect of his life.
Oh, yeah.
I can't imagine how he got to own all these things, but that's love it. Maybe we should take a field trip and go see him.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, this has been a great pleasure. Let me ask you one more thing. What do you do to
Yes.
except for besides the pandemic, before the pandemic, let's say, what do you do to relax? You're not running your organization and teaching and running to Brooklyn.
Well, a couple of things have do help. Certainly getting outside. Just because we're isolated doesn't mean you should stay inside. And we take walks every day, and that's so much an important part of, keeping your mind clear and keeping it fresh. I'm studying music all the time.
Mm-hmm.
That helps. I also do a little bit of, I sort of run every other day. That I think that's an important activity in addition to walking, and do stretches and yoga. That helps.
Nice.
And then, cooking,
Mm-hmm.
the fun stuff. I have to say, each night ends in some form of a Netflix detoxification series.
Oh, yeah.
Which helps sort of get all the wrongs in the day that went to go right, or at least neutral, so you can
Mm-hmm.
lay your head down and go to get some rest. So that
I was talking to Thea Musgrave recently, and she said the same thing. She told me what she does. She still composes. She's 90.
wow.
But then at night they watch Netflix, and my wife and I'll tell you, we watched West Wing for the first time. It's really something.
Oh, if I got some recommendations for you, I'll talk to you offline.
Okay.
Depending on what genre you like. I mean, there's just so many great things out there.
I know. Well, George, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Harold. It's been a pleasure and nice to see you. I mean, I haven't seen you in at least a year and a half, maybe 2 years, I think, was when we did the Atom. But hopefully we will come back to life in the next 6 months. By the way, what are you doing with yourself?
Well, I'm doing weekly lectures, 30 of them. And
Wow.
every week I'm doing a Zoom workshop for composers, for singers, for choirs. The schedule is at nyvirtuoso.org. I wrote a little book called Choralstration, a guide for. I made up the word. I asked Sam Adler what he thought about it. Sam Adler, the composer. For those of you who don't know, he's also 92 actually, and he wrote the book on orchestration.
Yeah.
Of course, Berlioz wrote the book on orchestration, but that was 200 years ago. And
Sure.
so Sam Adler says, he uses the word bandstration in his book, so why not choralstration, writing for choirs? So I wrote this little book about that and planning my concerts. I'm doing 15 concerts of all Bach. I'm taking a little break from contemporary music, even though I'd love to still do it, but I can't budget. 8 Bach concerts next season and 7 the following season, and
Wow.
contemporary music. I'm doing all every choral movement from every choral cantata. That's 186 cantatas. I'm doing every
Oh my.
choral movement with piano,
Okay.
pianoforte orchestra. I don't care what critics say anymore. I don't care what critics say. I'm hiring brilliant pianists, and I just want to do Bach, all of Bach, before I kick the bucket. So I've done the Passions and all that, and Christmas Oratory, the B minor Mass. But I'm learning all these new Bach cantatas, and it's a joy.
That's fabulous. Where is that? Is that a series, and where is that going to take place?
I'll be at St. Michael's
Okay.
Church, right, 99th in Amsterdam.
That's where our offices are.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I'm doing. I'm also leading 14 weekly sessions, hopefully in the fall, because we had to put it off, in conjunction with GEMS, the Gotham Early Music Society, sing-alongs / play-alongs of all the music of Josquin de Frey, because it's the 500th anniversary of his passing. So
Okay.
I'm doing, I think it's 86 pieces that all Josquin scholars confirm are his. Of course, there are a couple hundred others that are not, they're spurious. So I'm sticking with 86 pieces, including 14 masses. So that's what I'm. So that's what I'm doing.
You're keeping very busy, as you always are.
I have to.
Your signature on every email has like a page and a half. It's even always longer than the email of what you're doing and what you're affiliated with. It's amazing.
People tell me not to do that, but some people like it. Enjoy reading it.
It's great, Harold. You deserve to be lauded because you've done so much great work in your in all the courses that you've had, and I remember that Verdi Requiem at Carnegie Hall was stupendous.
Thank you.
And I know you're like us with Riverside Symphony. You produce the whole thing, and I mean it's just amazing.
That was astounding because I rehearsed my 7 choirs separately. Brought them together only for the dress rehearsal.
Oh man. Jeez. Talk about a scary situation.
Then, if I remember correctly, I had complete laryngitis for the only rehearsal with orchestra. And it was a 4-hour rehearsal, and I couldn't talk.
Oh my gosh. I wish you had video of that, because that would have been so great. Amazing. But you see, you're a great example of what young musicians they should hear these stories, because it should stimulate them to keep doing what we're doing and never give up and embrace the passion of the music that we love, that they love just the way we did.
Right. Excellent.
So important. Because we want music to continue. I mean, music's been around for God knows how long, and it needs to continue. And we need younger people to do it and to take up the mantle and carry it forward.
Right. And I, like you, enjoy so much teaching young people. It helps me to grow also, and keeps me excited and to pass on knowledge to the young folk. It's important. It's always been the case.
Yeah.
George, thank you so much.
Harold, it's been always a pleasure seeing you, talking to you, reminiscing, and thank you for thinking of me for this project. And I wish you continued success. I look forward to our future collaborations together, hopefully sooner than later. and of course, great success with your Bach project, and it sounds amazing.
All of your projects. Thank you, George.
All right, Harold.
Okay, then.
Be well. Thanks again.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.